And now that we've got the ball with a material map on it, we're going to do a very basic animation on it. To do this, we need to set our timer to the length of the animation that we want to use. So I'm just going to set my timer to PAL, and I'm going to set my end frame at about 100 frames. Then what I need to do is decide when the ball's going to start moving. So I'm going to have the ball start moving at frame 0. So I click on the animate button, the animate toggle, select my ball, drag my slide to where I want the ball, and then I drag the ball to where I want it to be by this time. So if we look at that now, we see that the ball's moving horizontally across the top of the table. Now what I need to do is decide on the vertical movement, because a ball doesn't fly through the air vertically or horizontally, it arcs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the animate button, move my timer to about 40, and then in a front or a left view, or my back view, I'm going to move the ball down to where it would hit the glass table, like so. And then we untoggle that. If we now look at this, we see that at that point the ball bounces off the table. So just zoom away from that using my IntelliMouse, and we see the ball bounces off the table. It's not quite moving the way a ball would bounce off a table, but it's getting very close. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is manipulate the ball so it looks as if it squishes when it hits the table. So again, I highlight the ball, I hit animate, I drag it to where I want to squish the ball, and I then scale the ball, and I only scale it in one direction. So in this case, I'm going to scale it in the Y. And there we see that the ball squished. Unfortunately, now that I've done that, the ball doesn't hit the table and squish all in sync. So what I'm going to do is click on the little tick that defines that key point in time, and I'm going to move that positions Z just down a little bit so that it now touches my glass table. If we now look at the ball, we see that it hits the glass table and squishes. But problem being that the ball actually starts to form before it hits the table. And this is where I'm going to introduce a thing called track view, and that would be this tool here. This tool is used mainly for animations. Now all I have to do is find my geosphere, here it is, and we can see all the controllable animatable attributes. Here we can see positions and scales. Now it's the scale that I'm interested in. If I just zoom in on that, we can see that the scale starts here, and if I right click on it, we can see it starts at 100. At this frame it's 6292, and it'll stay like that until I add another keyframe. So what I can actually do here is I can actually add another keyframe here. Also, you'll notice that as I drag the timer back and forth, a line shows us where we are in our time scale. So what I need to do is line my timer up to about here and add a new animator or a new keyframe here. And then I right click on that and I set its values back to 100. So now if we watch it, it deforms and then bounces off. Okay, you notice how it actually starts to elongate. That's because the object has an in and an out sine curve. And what we need to do is make that flat. Like so. So now you'll notice it doesn't deform until it hits the table. Unfortunately, it's not going back to its original shape. So then what we need to do is slide our slider around until we get to the right keyframe. And we're going to build another keyframe. And again, we're going to set the values. So now, if we watch it, it hits the table. It does come back a bit too soon. So what we can do is we can physically move that keyframe. Alright. Just going to zoom into my perspective here. And just play that, and you'll see that it hits the table and bounces off. So it's quite easy. So all we have to do now is finish off our animation. And to do this, we can just play it or render it. Another thing I'm going to introduce here is the preview render. So what we're going to do here is just make a preview. And we just hit create. There's not much we can do here, so except maybe change the timer. And there we go. Now we can watch it as a save. Okay, now that's the very basics behind animation. The track view is going to be one of the most used tools in animation, and it's probably the most powerful. So it helps if you get to know it a little, play with it and start to understand it.